Hi there everyone, Raki up here, international spokesperson for Free West Papua campaign. As you can see, I'm walking here in The Hague, right next and in front of the main entrance of the International Court of Justice, also known as the Peace Palace. And from here I want to highlight the current situation in West Papua, that we must understand that the geopolitics dynamics in the Pacific, where the US, Australia, New Zealand are all connecting with Pacific leaders, we want to highlight that they do not have to forget that West Papua is clearly part of the Pacific region. It's the western half of the island of New Guinea. It clearly belongs to Melanesia. And I want everybody to understand that while we are seeing news coverage 24/7 regarding the situation in Ukraine, which we obviously support all this news coverage, but at the same time West Papua have been confronted with a deadly silence by the mainstream media, by the global institutions, and it's about time that you just imagine that if the West or US or the Netherlands or Europe would support Russia in this case with military funds, with military training, imagine that. And that's exactly what the West is doing with Indonesia. Australia is doing with Indonesia, and the Netherlands is supporting them with weapon technology. While Indonesia is committing a genocide against the indigenous peoples of West Papua in the heart of the Pacific, we must reflect these double standards of the global world regarding the situation in West Papua, and especially on the doorstep of Australia, while they are talking with Pacific Island leaders regarding China's involvement in the region, they must talk about West Papua as well. And reports of UN regarding the victims in Ukraine for estimation about 4,000, which are 4,000 too much. Or what about the 500,000 indigenous West Papuans being slaughtered under Indonesian colonial rule? This is what Pacific leaders must bring on the table when Australia, New Zealand, or the US, or whatever Western countries is coming in for their interest. The Pacific interest is about stopping the genocide and ecocide on world's largest tropical island, West Papua, which is clearly part of the Pacific Island family. And today we had an amazing conference here in the Peace Palace auditorium regarding climate change, an advisory opinion, led by the wonderful nation of Vanuatu, taking a global leadership in this. And West Papua, who have launched the Green State Vision and COP, is very clear that we are here to protect the values and cultures and future existence not only of the West Papuans but the entire Pacific region and humanity, to say so, because West Papuans and other indigenous peoples have preserved Earth's ecosystems, preserved more than 80% of world's remaining biodiversity. And that's why what is happening in West Papua is in the interest of the entire planet. And as the West is, running towards the Pacific because of the so-called new Cold War dynamics, it is in the interest of the Pacific region. It's in the interest of Pacific culture, and that we highlight the ongoing genocide in West Papua against the indigenous peoples of West Papua. From here, Peace Palace in The Hague, Salam Hormat, Papua Merdeka.